Okay.
So right there. So yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to this Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization TCC meeting. This is March 6th, 2025, and the time is now 10:04. Again, welcome. We'll start with introductions around the table and then we'll go into the audience, starting to my left. Go ahead.
Sheldon Turner, Mecklenburg County Air Quality.
Heather Maloney, Town of Huntersville.
Rich Hoffman, Iredell County.
Erica Martin, Town of Mooresville.
Matt Kirkendall, City of Statesville.
Emily Hines, Village of Wesley Chapel.
Aaron Tucker, Town of Cornelius. Bjorn Hansen, Union County.
Todd Huntsinger, Indian Trail.
Kevin Parker, Town of Stallings.
James Kelly, Town of Waxhaw.
Bryson Hester, City of Monroe.
Roger Castillo, NCDOT Transportation Planning Division.
Andrew Ventresca, Town of Troutman. Jeff Johnson, CRTPO.
Liz Babson, City of Charlotte.
Candace Rory, Charlotte Planning.
Dan Lever, Charlotte General Services.
Brian Hort with CAT, MTC Rep.
Diane Thomas, Public Health Focus Area.
Neil Panic, NCDOT Division 12.
Gwen Cook, Greenway Focus Area.
Andrew Golden, Town of Davidson.
Dave Campbell, City of Charlotte.
Sean Epperson, NCDOT Division 10.
Dana Suchenki, Town of Matthews.
Steve Fry, Town of Mint Hill.
Neil Burke, CRTPO.
Michelle Pedro, McAdams.
Andy Grimsey, Central Iowa Regional Council.
Courtney, Central Iowa Regional Council.
Bob Cook, CRTPO.
Sophie Kane, Town of Louisville. Alex McIntyre, Kinley Horn.
Todd Morelli, Foursquare ITP. Kyle Hearing, Foursquare ITP. Scott Miller, NCDOT.
And Regional. Kevin Christopher, Theo Thompson, CRTPO. Vicky Dellert, CRTPO.
Spider, CRTPO.
Earl Leonard, CRTPO.
Brian Holborn, CRTPO. First Bridges, CRTPO.
Great. And again, welcome everyone. Now on to our first item. And may I have a motion for the adoption of today's agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Next, we have a couple items on our consent agenda. May I have a motion for the approval of the February 6th, 2025 TCC amendments, the 2024-2033 TIP amendments, and the FY 2025 CRTPO self-certification?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. We have two business items today. Our first, we're going to hear from Andrew Ventresca on CRTPO discretionary funds project call and hear about those recommended projects.
All right, good morning. I have the pleasure of giving the last presentation on behalf of the POC to this board today. So I'm very pleased to do that. We are requesting action today to approve the list that's going to be presented along with the amendments to the TIP, and also endorse the allocation of about $35 million for 20 projects in a resolution. This slide should look familiar, as all these should. This is our available funding. We have about $32.5 million of DA funds, about $500,000 of the carbon reduction funds, and a little bit over $2 million of the CMAQ funding, for a total of about $35.5 million available. This is a recommended highway list. We do have 3 requesting supplementary funding, one from Indian Trail, one from Charlotte, and one from Wesley Chapel. You can see what those projects are and what they're requesting. This was also in your packet. And then we do have 6 new ones. We've got one from Waxhaw, another from Charlotte, 2 from Huntersville, 1 from Indian Trail, and 1 from Marshville. The total we're recommending for highway projects is a little bit over 27 million. These are the non-highway projects we're recommending. We do have one supplemental request for a multi-use path project in Matthews. We do have 2 requests from Davidson, both multi-use paths. We have 2 requests from Mooresville. Both of those are sidewalk projects. And then we have an additional sidewalk project in Matthews and another one in Mineral Springs. This total is about $7 million in request. We do have one air quality improvement project. This came from Mecklenburg County, and this was for some EV fast chargers. The request, as you can see, is $667,000. And the last portion here is our planning projects. We do have 3, one from Union County, one from Central Lina, and another from Cornelius. And the total being requested is $340,000. So summary of recommendations. We are recommending 20 projects. We had 20 submittals, so we were able to recommend at least a portion of all projects that had applied. So as you can see, it's broken down by mode, shortfall, and new projects. This not only gives funding to all 20 projects, it meets the targets of our policy. So we're recommending to move ahead forward with what you see in front of you. And again, we're requesting action on this item. So I'll open it up for any questions.
I just have a curiosity question about the EV charging. How many cars does it charge at one time?
I believe it's 8.
Thank you.
8 cars.
All right. May I have a motion to recommend that the board approve discretionary funds from the 2024 fall call for projects and amend the 2024-2033 Transportation Improvement Program to add the funding allocations to new and existing projects and approve a resolution to endorse the allocation of $35,332,319,000 in discretionary funds for 20 projects.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Second. Oh, thank you.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. And again, thank you, Andrew, for your leadership with the POC over the last several years. We are glad to transition to a new way of doing business and hopefully everybody will have an opportunity to participate in that going forward. Next, we'll hear from Bob on the FY26 UPWP.
We have reached the end of the road in the development of the FY26 work program. I'm happy to report. So today we are asking you to recommend to the board that it approve the FY26 UPWP. Just one update. We did have a carry forward request that came in a little bit on the late side, but certainly for reasonable reasons. And these were put out in the memo that was in the agenda packet. This is the TDM pilot project. Central Lina Regional Council is the sponsor. And you can see the 2 reasons there for the carry forward request into FY26 at a relatively minimal amount of $11,000, and staff supports this. The funding summary, this was also included in your agenda packet. We are including, of course, the 3 local planning projects that Andrew just mentioned, that you just recommended approval of. There are also some additional projects that we'll be including in the work program because they are planning initiatives going on in the region. The ETOD effort sponsored by CATS, the Reconnecting Communities project also sponsored by CDOT. And then, of course, our grants, hopefully they'll survive into the next fiscal year, will be included in the work program as well. We also just wanted to remind everyone about the Section 5303 allocations. Of course, our recommendation includes the recommendation to reduce the original ICATS and Union County transportation requests to make sure that we were not programming more 5303 money than we actually have, but that the trade-off would be that they would apply their Section 5307 money to fill that gap. And then these are the proposed allocations, the final proposed allocations. We went over these at last month's meeting. They have not changed since then. I don't think there's even been a minor tweak. We did mention at the last meeting that we did adjust planning process slightly and management and operations somewhat as well. But other than that, there have been no changes really almost since the beginning of this process. And so with that, again, there's the action requested that the TCC recommended the board that it adopt the work program. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, hearing no questions, may I have a motion to recommend that the board approve the FY 2026 Unified Planning Work Program?
So moved.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Bob. Moving on to information reports. We have 3 of those today. And first, we're going to hear from Travis on the 2026-2035 TIP update.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everyone. Travis Johnson, CRTPO. I'm here to talk about the 2026-2035 Transportation Improvement Program and the State Transportation Improvement Program. I want to go over just briefly the NCDOT process for STIP and NPO TIP adoption. Talk about the processes we followed to date, and then talk about the schedule and next steps. So FHWA requires that we must adopt a new STIP every 4 years, but in North Carolina, we typically do this every 2, and this is what the cycle we're on right now. NPO TIPs are incorporated directly without change into North Carolina STIP, so we focus on the projects in our planning region, which then get adopted into the STIP. These projects are fiscally constrained project lists, so that they must have the estimated funds predicted in the project list. And then also we have to meet conform with the state implementation plan for air quality, because the CRTPO is in a maintenance status for ozone. So we have to ensure that the TIP is consistent with NCDOT's TIP. We have to amend the NTP, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, if any of the horizon years do not align with a project when we expect it to actually be complete and open to the public. And again, we just make sure that we are meeting that air quality conformity determination. This is the 5th prioritization cycle that we have created under the STI law. So starting in P3, we started the process to create prioritized project lists under this law. And so currently we are in P7 still. So while we were talking about the draft STIP for 2026-2035, this is the final steps in prioritization 7.0. This will just be important to keep in mind, because later this summer, we are going to start prioritization 8.0. So that will get easier. I'm sure they won't become confusing as we talk about the MTP and the P7 process and P8. So projects, again, are submitted by MPOs, RPOs, and NCDOT divisions. They get broken into 3 funding tiers, either statewide, where they compete against all projects in the state; regional impacts, which goes between the 2 regions, which we have Region E and Region F, which is Union County and Mecklenburg, which compete within those regions; and then Iredell competes in our Region F, and then divisions, Division 10 and Division 12. Again, Iredell being split into Division 12 and Mecklenburg County being Division 10. For the estimated 10 years of the 2026-2035 STIP, the estimated funds being allocated, these numbers were updated from the board presentation because we received newer information from the STIP unit. So when you look at all the projects that are allocated, this is the amount of funds we are anticipating being spent in that 10-year process. So when looking at the spreadsheet, trying to understand how many projects we're going to see as a region or as a state. So this spreadsheet that was shared by NCDOT, we sorted the project list. There was about 160 projects in the list, around $63.6 billion. Projects in the delivery, which means projects that were in the first 5 years, were about 819 projects. 149 of them for principal engineering only, and then 408 of those projects had a reference to being unfunded. So this is for the entire state of North Carolina, and so we have no local projects list to then sort and compare to for what projects might have fallen out, or to identify projects that might need corrections. So we sorted that list for the CRTPO planning region, and so in that list we found that we had 96 total projects, 72 of which were in the delivery STIP, 17 projects were listed for PE only, and then when we added together the projects that were listed as unfunded in the STIP And then we compared the P7 list to the P6 list of projects that were included. We are showing about 30 projects that are listed as unfunded or removed from P6 to P7. So again, committed projects that you see in this STIP list are projects that will have a right-of-way or construction year between 2026 and 2030. So then if you see your project in this list and it has a right-of-way or construction during that time period, this is classified then as a delivery project, and this should not need to be reprioritized in prioritization 8.0. If your project is funded for PE only, if your project is listed as unfunded, or if it does not have projects with right-of-way or construction in the first or before fiscal year 2030, those projects will have to be resubmitted for prioritization 8.0. So keep that in mind when you're reviewing the list of projects. FHWA requires consistency between the MTP and the TIP. So as part of our analysis of the draft STIP that was released, we're then comparing that to the current MTP. And I know we're working on a new MTP, the 2055 MTP, but that'll be used for developing P8. So for this list, we're comparing it to the 2050 MTP, looking at when the construction year will be, and then making assumptions about when we believe it will be open for the public to use, because we deal with horizon years in the MTP, which means when we expect it to be open to the public. But in the STIP list, you'll see construction year, and that means when they anticipate the start of the construction. So we're using the best information we can to make those assumptions. And so if a project was subdivided, if it was like one project and there became an A or a B section, but in the MTP it was one section, we have to update the MTP to separate those into two projects. If a project was reduced or expanded in order to meet a need due to construction or due to new information for a project, we have to update the MTP to make sure that is properly reflected. And again, if it has a horizon year of 2030, but it's not in the STIP for a right-of-way with it before 2030, well, then we have to then delay the horizon year for the MTP. So that way, when we run the regional analysis, everything lines up. So TIP projects are program of federal funds and are regionally significant must be amended in MTP. And then we must make sure that the schedules align. So currently in our draft review for MTP amendments, we're showing that we need to make 9 modifications to horizon years, 2 modifications of project details. We have to add 7 projects to the 2050 MTP. And then also 2 projects will need to be removed from the 2050 MTP. And those are the projects that were requested to be removed by Matthews and Huntersville, which we had acted on previously. Those projects were still in the MTP and will need to be removed. The project list was released by NCDOT January 31st, and NCDOT is still in a public comment period until April 4th. Also, the divisions have separate public comment periods that are being led by the division offices. CRTPO will have a public comment period and a public involvement process. We have it listed as TBD because we're still trying to work with our partners at federal agencies to schedule coordination meetings. And there's been some delays with setting up those meetings. So we're just trying to work through that process as quickly as we can. But we're still on track for a STIP adoption in the summer of 2025, and then a TIP adoption in around the same time frame. And then we anticipate FHWA approval in the fall of 2025. So next steps is we're confirming that the MTP amendments list is accurate, working to create an air quality determination, working with NCDOT STIP unit for evaluation of fiscal constraints and making sure that project estimates are as accurate as they can be. And then also we will be working shortly to create a public involvement period for air quality conformity, the MTP amendments, and then the draft 2026-2035 TIP, which again is our section of the projects in the STIP. We have a dedicated page on our website at crtp.org. If you scan this, I'll take you straight to that page, but it's a 2026-2035 Transportation Improvement Program page. And on this page, we have a list of NCDOT draft 2020. I'm going to say draft STIP instead of re-saying the names every time. Draft STIP project list. When you click that button, it will take you to NCDOT's website. And on that website, there's the Excel spreadsheet and an interactive ArcGIS map tool, so you can find your projects and identify what the status is in the draft STIP. We then also have a separate list of projects as highway, non-highway, and a comparison table. And so that is that spreadsheet shared by NCDOT sorted for projects that are in our planning area, and then either sorted for highway or non-highway projects. And then the comparison table is comparing what was in P6 and what is in P7 and identifying what the changes are. And then the final list of project lists you'll see are our TIP project lists, which is a sorting of those lists. And so we have it sorted by highway, non-highway, projects removed from previous prioritization cycles. And so what that means is just if it was in P6 and it's missing from P7, that is included in this list. If we requested for it to be removed, that is in this list. And then finally is a draft list of 2050 MTP amendments. And this is just a list of projects and what years we are recommending changing horizon years to, how we anticipate the descriptions need to be changed, and then the projects that need to be removed or updated. So with that, I can answer any questions anyone might have about this process.
Questions? Go ahead.
I was looking at the two table or slides with the statewide totals, and then for our region's totals, seems like the percent of projects that got removed for the CARPA regions a good bit higher than the state total. So I think the state was like 8 out of 63, and
So-
ours is
Keep in mind, our numbers are different because I was able to add in what projects were missing from P6, and I cannot do that for the state.
so how would that affect the state number then? It would
I don't,
add projects?
yeah, there would be more projects listed as unfunded at the state. So I took their spreadsheet, I sorted it based upon these categories and just summed it in the Excel spreadsheet just to try to summarize this information for you. I don't know what other so there are projects that are just missing from the state STIP that were removed, that were not left in the list to be identified. We have a copy of the P6 list, so I took that spreadsheet, compared it to the current spreadsheet, and just identified what was missing. So our list of projects that are unfunded or removed is more accurate. In order to do that for the state, I would have to do that for the entire state, and just the number of projects that would require for me to verify would be difficult to do.
So we have a higher number of unfunded listed than they would
Yes.
using their methodology. Okay,
Correct.
because I'm struggling with the takeaway here in terms of like what's the lesson learned of or systematically some types of projects like running into issues, or is it an urban area versus a rural area or a interstate issue? Like, we
Right.
the legislature keeps putting more money into the STIP program, and we keep on running into delays and projects
Right.
getting pulled out.
Well, so this is a lot of the projects that are coming out now is due to the shortfalls. Because remember previously we had talked about how all the categories were overprogrammed due to project increases. So this is more just a representation of balancing that budget, because in order to adopt this, we have to have a balanced expected or financially constrained list of projects. So projects needed to fall out in order to adopt this STIP. So we did not perform any analysis for what kind of projects or what types of projects, and we don't have access to that database to even run that analysis. You want to talk about this, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, construction costs have gone up on all the projects, whether it's rural or urban. But right away and utility costs have skyrocketed across all the projects, but more so in urban areas because land's worth more. So you asked whether it was rural or urban, and I don't know definitively how that's going to pan out if you were to look into it, but I would venture to say that your urban divisions, your urban areas have a higher increase of overall project costs because of that increase in right of way and utility relocation. It would take a lot of digging to verify that, but I would be very surprised if I'm wrong in that assumption. Which
What
would
would
be
the
why,
number-
CRTPO, but also Raleigh and all that are gonna see maybe a higher number than other divisions that are more rural. in nature.
Yeah, and again, for our analysis, we pulled that Excel spreadsheet, which is the first link on the web page. And so whatever categories are in there is the information we have. So it doesn't identify which projects had increased right of way. It just emphasizes the cost of the projects. In our spreadsheets that we shared, in our lists of projects for P6 versus P7 for highway, we identify what horizon years changed. And we drew attention to that, and we can compare the cost that was presented in P6 to P7, but that would be a total cost. It would not be a detailed analysis of what individually went up, because we don't have access to that information.
Rod?
Can you pull back the public comment period? So January 31st. Yeah, I don't pay attention a lot with the public comment periods with other things, but is that pretty common practice to have a public comment period start a month before we actually got the list, the town? We didn't get the list till, end of February.
We received a list on January 31st, and so they opened their public comment period at January 31st. We shared initially that information, but then we have been trying to work through that information because the STIP is very large.
Right.
And so we've been cutting it down to our region of information, which is why we have those separate lists, which just prioritize highway, non-highway, what the MTP needs to do. And so our analysis has been trying to reduce it to a consumable amount of projects. So NCDOT released the STIP on January 31st and entered into a public comment period, which they are still in. We will have a separate public comment period once we have a chance to confirm the project lists with our regional partners, because we have to work with neighboring MPOs as well, because of our quality conformity. And so we will have a separate public comment period as well. But NCDOT is still in a public comment period till April 4th. And then the divisions will have separate public comment periods for Division 12 and Division 10. That information is on the webpage. I should put this on this table as well, but.
Yeah, again, sorry if I should have known that information, didn't, but I appreciate you letting me know.
And then Travis, might I ask, I don't know if you guys have already done this in your Wednesday morning transportation staff meeting, maybe covered this item in a little bit more detail, or commit to do that over the next month.
Yeah, so when we originally had this information, we presented it at the transportation staff meeting first, then we presented it to the board. We plan on coming back again to transportation staff meeting once we have met with our regional partners to identify what next steps are for public engagement, how to raise awareness, making sure you're sharing that information. Again, at the point we are right now is we have these project lists. We are asking that you look at them, review them for accuracy, make sure the information looks correct, make sure the names are correct, make sure, again, humans make these lists. So make sure nothing was typed in or there was mistakes in the typing, make sure something wasn't tweaked without your local knowledge. We are confirming this information is accurate, working with our regional partners, and then we will identify the public engagement for this process. And then we'll come back to this group. We'll go to a transportation staff meeting as well. And we're also going to present the same information to the board. So right now we're at the point of we have lists. We want you to go to the webpage, look at your projects, make sure they are all correct, because now is the point to correct them before we adopt the STIP and TIP, because then that will be the projects that we have scheduled for the next 10 years. I think Matt had a question.
Yeah, I'm sure Bjorn is also interested in the numbers. I think he's trying to compare us to how we're performing across the state. So our percentage was roughly 32% versus the state's at 18%.
So we
what
can't
would that
can't
number-
roughly compare those numbers
Right.
because I did not run a statewide analysis.
Right. What's the number, what's the 2.7 billion drop to without adding I forget the year at this point, but do you know what that number drops to?
Not off the top of my head, I do not. And then there's also questions because some projects are listed as unfunded because they're part of other projects. Sometimes they're left in there when they were separated into smaller parts. There are projects in the list that are listed as complete. Yeah, this was general information for like the general numbers we are seeing. The spreadsheet's in the website, so you can download it and see what the full spreadsheet is. But to run that, if we have specific questions we want, we can forward those onto the STIP unit and ask them to provide that information back to us.
Okay.
But I just don't have access to the source material, so I'm just trying to work through it with you.
Got it.
But if you have specific questions, we can ask the STIP unit. We can form a list of questions and send that to them.
Any more questions? All right, thank you, Travis. Next, we're going to get an update from Sarah with Centralina on Connect Centralina Transportation Demand Management Plan and Program.
And Darrell is joining. I'm going to take a little bit of time to start out to talk about the development of this Connect Centralina Regional TDM plan. the process, what's in the plan, and what we're planning to do next year. And then Darrell is going to introduce, this year we've been doing TDM pilot projects with funding from CRTPO, and we'll get into some of the highlights from those projects. So I'm pretty sure everyone here understands what TDM is and transportation demand management. It's really changing how and when people travel. And why is it important to this group? I think this group, based on that last presentation, knows that new infrastructure and roads takes time and money. And TDM efforts are really about educating and promoting the infrastructure that we have today and make it the use of that infrastructure as efficient as possible. There's been TDM programs in other regions that are very successful. When we were developing the Connect Beyond Mobility Plan in 2021, a key recommendation was for our region to develop a regional TDM plan. There are organizations working on TDM, and CATS, of course, with their Vanpool program, also Sustain Charlotte. It's very Mecklenburg focused and a little bit, piecemeal. Connect Beyond recommended that we work together, develop a regional plan, cover a 10-county planning area in North Carolina. And so pretty much upon adopting the Connect Beyond plan, we went to work on developing the regional TDM plan. We got to build on the partnerships that we formed, developing Connect Beyond's plan. Obviously, CRTPO is a key partner in this and part of the project management team. I'll also call out NCDOT's Integrated Mobility Division was also a critical partner in providing funding for this. Took about 16 months to develop the plan. Our lead consultant was Kittleson Associates, and we had a lot of great partnerships and engagement throughout the planning process. Just at a high level, we had some focus groups. We talked to bike ped folks, land use planners, the business community, who are obviously really critical partners in any TDM program. Commuters are a key target audience for TDM incentives and education and outreach. We coordinated with NCDOT. We had stakeholder meetings with economic development groups, workforce development. We looked at 5 case studies across the country, including 2 in our own state, Wilmington's Go Coast and Triangle Transportation Choices, to kind of look at how other programs were set up. We looked at ones that were in MPOs and regional councils, what the staffing looked like, what the funding, what were their top TDM strategies, how they implement them. We learned quite a bit from the case studies. And then, of course, we had a steering committee that met every other month that guided us throughout this process. There's many in the room today who are on that steering committee. I'm very thankful for your time, and many of those people have now transitioned to our advisory committee for the program. So lots of engagement throughout the process. One of the first milestones was developing a vision statement. I'm not going to read it, but I really think it reflects, more than just, we want to find sustainable and affordable options for folks, understanding that transportation is really, a major expense for most people traveling to work or to school, and that it's really important for it to be convenient, right? People don't change their behavior if it's hard. So TDM, we need to focus on, making transportation choices that are accessible, known, and convenient. One of the inputs to the plan was doing a current assessment of our region. Again, this is the 10-county region. So GCL MPO is got its 3 counties. This is a little bit bigger than the Central Lina region. Because of that, we've added Cleveland County, so it's a full 10 counties in North Carolina. The Connect Beyond plan obviously covered some of South Carolina. This plan is really focused on North Carolina, but that doesn't mean we're not going to coordinate with our partners in South Carolina. Commuting patterns don't know state lines. Obviously, this region has a number of people that commute back and forth from South Carolina. This analysis looked at the mobility hubs identified in the Connect Beyond plan and really looking at what places were TDM ready. So of course, the big commuter corridors in our region, 85, 77, 74. So looking at, you know, employers or colleges or regional medical centers within those corridors, and what are places that are TDM ready and places we could focus our efforts early in the program. I will say that this is, if there isn't a dot on your town or area, it does not mean that we are not going to provide technical assistance. This is really just a guide, you know, a program that's just starting out that needs to cover quite a large area. So the final program was adopted by Central Iona's board in September. Like I mentioned, it is covering a 10-county North Carolina planning area. The plan has over 50 TDM strategies, and I'll get to the top ones in a minute. It also includes performance metrics. That's really critical for our state funding that we receive, that we measure how successful the TDM strategies are that we're implementing. The plan has a step-by-step implementation plan for Central Ina. We can't do everything all at once. You know, what are we going to do in year one? Build on that in year two, and it's really laid out well in the plan. And our staff is seeing that as a guidebook, essentially. And then program management recommendations, that includes the development of the TDM advisory committee, which has already started meeting, and also the hiring of some TDM staff. I mentioned there's 50 TDM strategies. I thought we'd just highlight the high priority ones. These are the ones we'll be focusing in on in the first couple years. I'll just highlight 4 and 5. You know, 4, having a travel option website is really critical for any TDM program. So Central Ina will be working on developing that, and they're revising the Connect Beyond website. And promoting carpool matching, looking at other programs for our more rural areas that don't have as much public transportation as an option, we see carpool and vanpool as really important transportation options for folks. The state NCDOT has a tool called Share the Ride NC, and it's been pretty successful in the Triangle region with employers, universities. We really want to promote it in our region and create you know, successful carpool matching in our region. Obviously, carpool matching only works, or a tool like that, if you have people signing up. So that's something that we'll be promoting and hopefully through, you know, partnerships and the work we're doing. But we see NC, or Share the Ride NC, as a really critical tool in the work we'll be doing. And then obviously like 7, 8, 9, again, employers and groups of employers will be really critical partners and target audiences for the TDM program. And we're transitioning this year. We finished planning in the fall, and we're formally launching our program next fiscal year. Like I just mentioned, we have the advisory committee that's going to help us advise on our implementation activities. We're seeking funding. We're applying for an NCDOT grant due this month to help with our staffing. We're currently working on several TDM pilot projects that we'll talk about in a minute with Jarrell, and then just keep seeking public and private partnerships that this plan will really, you know, we'll be able to have more impact the more partnerships we have. And it won't just be with public entities like TDM programs. We really need to reach out to economic development, the business community, employers, and get them on board and promoting TDM strategies. So I'm going to turn it over to Jarrell for a minute.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jarrell Leonard with CRTPO. So in current fiscal year 25, CRTPO works with Central Ina on the federal granted pilot project. The project is to seek out and work with creating possibly 4 to 8 centers across the 3-county region in the CRTPO planning area. Key deliverables is to work with creating a possible toolbox to help understand the barriers, to overcome those barriers, and help with not only the large employers, the higher education institution, as well as medical or healthcare hubs in our 3-county area. In those development of TDM strategies, we want to be able to help them apply to other similar centers across the overall planning area, as well as help Central Iowa implement their overall plan. Marketing and education. Now, one of the things to kind of speak of more in detail, one of the things going back to the previous priorities like 8, helping with the formation of transportation management areas. That's one of the key takeaways. We're going to speak about that in a minute, where South Park Community Partners is working with us closely with a pilot project around the South Park Municipal Service District. Sarah.
Thanks, Darrell. So just some highlights. And again, this work is right now just defined to the CRTPO planning area, but Central Iowa, obviously we have a larger planning area. This is great because we can take these pilot projects, develop the materials, and then apply it to other places across the 10-county region. So they're really important for us to launch this program. So higher ed is a great venue for TDM strategies. And you've got students and you have employees. We are working with CPCC Levine Campus, Mitchell Community College, and Wingate University, which has like a little bit of a unique program. But for the most part, students, barriers for them, or transportation barriers, include just getting to campus. But for community colleges, often it's getting between campuses because not all courses are offered at all campuses. So in speaking to both CPCC and Mitchell, that between campus movement is a barrier. We met with NC State and Wake Tech in December. They have pretty robust TDM programs, so kind of learning what they're doing to help their students travel. And for Wake Technical, they also have multiple campuses. And Share the Ride NC I think will be a great tool for community colleges to get students to go who are, might already be taking a class. Well, you can take a classmate, you might share gas money, and developing some marketing and education materials for community colleges to promote Share the Ride NC. CPCC Levine Campus also has a number of students who are in Union County. I think the number is actually 40%. And so they're, giving those students, letting them know that they could actually get transportation through Union County transportation to go to school. That's another, getting that materials out to those students, putting it on the website, and Union County transportation has been very helpful in getting those materials pulled together. And the Wingate University is just they have a group of new students who have intellectual and developmental disabilities who they want to use public transportation to get to jobs. And so this is really a travel training, and it's a partnership we're doing with Disability Rights to get those students trained actually in the classroom and then move to the vehicles, how to book a trip, all that kind of stuff. So that's just another aspect of this pilot project that we think could be applied in other counties. So employment and business, Darrell mentioned South Park Community Partners. Many of you know that they have launched the Skipper, which is an electric microtransit service in a 1 square mile area. That's their municipal service district. So we've been working with them. We just got their 90-day data, and we're just geocoded it and trying to work with CATS and CDOT and look like, where is it overlay with current infrastructure, current routes for CATS. Also just for them, for that Skipper, they're looking at ways, how can we continue this service? What are the funding mechanisms? This is just a 1-year pilot. They'd like to continue. And so doing some research about other similar programs and how they've funded, either through, something like you can sell marketing, you can do ads on the app. There's lots of different ways you can fund those programs. So it's been really interesting working with them and learning, about more about the Skipper. And Vanguard they've recently are going to be consolidating their offices and moving to the university area, actually just down the road from Central Iowa's offices. So working with them about all the transportation options that their employees have coming to the university campus site. So that's also been a great learning experience for us as a TDM program. of, developing that list of options, how to, how an employer can market that to their, or share that information with their employees. What kind of incentives can an employer create to help employees make some of those, different transportation choices other than a single occupancy vehicle to get to work. So we really have enjoyed kind of working with Vanguard and, again, developing some materials that we can then use with other employers. And lastly, in the healthcare sector, we're working with Lake Norman Regional Medical Center, and you saw earlier Bob's presentation that this is a little delayed because of their merger with Duke Health, and they might probably have a different name in 6 months, but really improving patient access to the hospital. They're a private facility, so working with ICATS and how can ICATS better serve the patients of Lake Norman Regional Medical Center. Oftentimes they have patients get in Ubers and really having a public transportation service that's more familiar. We're working with patients with medical equipment who can take wheelchairs, who are a little more familiar with that, an older population. And so making those connections and promoting the use of a public transportation service rather than just a Uber ride that is quite expensive. So that's the work we'll be doing with Lake Norman Regional Medical Center at post-merger, and hopefully really have them integrate with ICATS and have patients better able to access transportation that way. I think that's my last slide. I'm not sure if there's any questions for Drella.
Thank you, Sarah and Jarrell. Any questions?
Question over here. A bike or shared mobility question. Is the toolbox y'all are developing for your partners, do they include things like shared mobility and or like shared electric bike fleets, things like that?
I hope so. The pilots don't have that component, but for sure, I mean, TDM is really all about reducing trips, single occupancy vehicle trips. So all of that, for sure, are TDM strategies. And I hope that in the next year we can kind of expand upon, I think our pilot project, there really isn't a bike ped component, but I definitely see e-bikes and bike ped as a key part of any TDM program.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Do you have a sense of, to do that, to get share mobility or like bike share into those partners, would it take a grant, or do you think the stakeholders have enough incentive to do it on their own, working with y'all?
So right now, we're trying to work with our stakeholders to try to see how they can form their own individual, like Transportation Management Association, which would include micromobility, bike and ped. But right now, the initial is just trying to create a toolbox so that they understand the framework of what are the needs. That would be the follow-up phases, such as bike and ped.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. Great presentation. Just curious about the criteria you use for determining which pilot projects you were going to pursue.
So we did develop a kind of detailed list of criteria, but I will say the most important criteria was a willing partner.
I suspected that might be.
So, I mean, I keep this like list of all the meetings I've had with interest. I mean, I'm like up around 50. I mean, some people like sound like they're interested and then you don't hear from them.
Right.
So, I mean, it really for us was who really wants to do something, do it, this year, make an impact and work with us and put the time in. So,
Right.
Although, obviously we wanted geographic diversity, we wanted to cover healthcare, business, higher ed, because we see those as really kind of key sectors, key target audiences. But the willing partnership, that was like top of the list.
Yeah, I guess because I was curious about CPCC in particular, because I was thinking the Harris campus, which is on the west side, just curious as to why you went with the Levine versus Harris campus, but.
I'm trying to remember why they came to us. I think they were already working with CATS. They did a survey last summer.
So they maybe had already had good access compared to maybe Levine.
I think that they have pretty limited access. I know Brian's like cringing, but so they are served by Route 51. It's a deviation from the usual route several times a day. And I think that the survey they did last summer was really focused on their high school students. They have a lot of high school students that go to campus to take a college, get ahead and take college classes. So I think that's how they came about. But through this process and talking to the Levine campus about Share the Ride NC, I've been looped in with more administrative folks. So talking to them, because that would be something they would do for all the campuses. And so I didn't mention it. The NCDOT is actually has an RFP. They're looking for a new technology partner for that tool. There's not going to be any gap in service, but they're changing it. They're investing in it. It's going to get better. CPCC is kind of they want to time that up so that no one has to re-sign up. And so really they're probably launching that more in the summer and fall. And they still have some questions that we're trying to get answered for them.
Any more questions? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear an update and information on a CTP amendment in Monroe for US 74 and Rocky River Road grade separation. Bryson, welcome.
Good morning, Bryson Hester, City of Monroe. This is the first time seeing me up here, but you'll see me up a few times when we bring this back. So members of TCC, I'll be presenting to you today the Comprehensive Transportation Plan Amendment for the US 74 and Rocky River Road grade separation. This presentation is going to be on the outlines, benefits, and next steps for this amendment. So no action is going to be requested today from the TCC. The US 74 and Rocky River Road grade separation CTP amendment public engagement period is only being presented as an informational item at this time. If approved, the public comment period will begin on April 24th and will end on May 24th. The public meeting will be held at Monroe City Hall on May 14th and from 5 to 6:30 p.m. During this time, residents and stakeholders will have the chance to share their feedback that will guide the final steps of the amendment process. So through the update of their transportation plan, Indian Trail initially introduced these particular improvements and their potential benefits for the city of Monroe. The proposed grade separation is intended to The proposed grade separation is intended to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion, enhancing connectivity for users, with the location of the separation being selected due to its location between the two cities. There are several key benefits to the proposed grade separation project. For one, it would help to reduce the amount of accidents thanks to improved traffic flow. Additionally, pedestrian safety will be improved at the intersection. Beyond safety and efficiency, the project also supports economic development by improving access to employment centers near Monroe and the airport. So updating the comprehensive transportation plan is a multi-step process that will span over the course of several months. First, the city of Monroe passed a resolution to authorize starting the process. We're currently at the stage where staff presents information on the project and public engagement period in front of the Wednesday CRTPO transportation staff meeting, as well as the TCC and board. Next, we will present again next month to open the public comment period, where we will gather feedback from key stakeholders, municipalities, and the public. And then assuming all the feedback is positive and everything goes well, we'll move ahead with resolutions for change or endorsing change. And then we will be back in July to present our findings. And then the following month, we'll return again for TCC and board action. And then this slide is just restating the information on the previous slide, just kind of displayed in a different way for easy reference. And I'm here to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, I have a couple, or
Okay.
maybe just one. You mentioned on a previous slide, the next steps in passing resolutions. Can you tell me what jurisdictions are involved in that?
Sure. Union County and Indian Trail.
And Monroe, I guess? or
And,
would Mon-
and
yeah.
yes, Monroe,
Okay.
yes.
All right, and what, can you tell me the difference, the before and after? I don't know if I saw a slide showing that. The change, what exists today versus what
Oh.
you're,
Okay. So, the, in green here is Indian Trails project, and then in blue is, U-5764, kind of our project. And then right in the middle is where the red dot is the proposed grade separation. So it's kind of right in between the two cities.
so it's just completely new?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
that's the
you.
amendment.
That wasn't quite clear.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you, Bryson.
Thank you.
And that concludes our information reports. Now we'll move into other reports. As always, Division 10 and Division 12 construction updates were included in your agenda packets. Both Sean and Anil are with us today, so grab them after the meeting if you have any questions. And it looks like no updates from any other NCDOT. I would like to make a real quick announcement. Alex, who is not with us today, we'd like to congratulate him. He has moved into another position within NCDOT. And so he will no longer be representing Integrated Mobility Division. We appreciated his participation. He was one of the first folks that joined us in many, many years from that group. So we're hopeful that his replacement will come join us again soon. Jennifer. Oh, Curtis first. Okay, Curtis.
So just be a really quick reminder for our active transportation corridors workshop this afternoon. Noted in your agenda, active transportation corridors were first developed in 2050 for the 2050 MTP. We're revising those for the 2055. Our consultant team, sub-consultant team from Foursquare ITP is here. They're going to guide us through that workshop this afternoon. It is geared more towards our work group members, so just an FYI. And we are encouraging folks to be there in person as well. So we'll see you all this afternoon. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jennifer, your turn.
Good morning. On May 6th, we're going to do another training workshop with NCDOT. I don't have an agenda yet, but I'm happy to send that out as soon as I have a little bit more information. But I wanted you to start thinking about saving the date if you'd like to attend. The last one we did 2 years ago, I think it was 9:30 to 4 p.m. That's a long time for sitting. Probably more 3-ish, and we'll do some type of a lunch. I'd like to focus on right-of-way. So the right-of-way expert actually was a professor or teacher. And so he presented things really nicely. And so I think if he can talk a little bit more, go into a little bit more depth. If there are subjects that you're interested in going into more depth on, please send me an email, or if there's any other type of structure that you would like different from the workshop we had a couple years ago, which was nicely attended, by the way, and so most of you were there. We will do both remote and in person. So if you're in person, we'll have lunch and some good breakfast treats. Less sugar. I find it actually goes well, less sugar. So Anyway, I will be back with more information, but I wanted to get that out there now. Any questions?
Any questions for Jennifer? All right, thank you. Healthy breakfast snacks. I don't know that I've ever seen that in one phrase. All right, upcoming issues.
Just two reminders for the group. Reminder of after this meeting will be the Safe Streets for All in-person event. So if you are not staying for that event, we can make space for everyone so that way they can rearrange the room as they need to see fit. And then final update is for 2055 MTP roadway submitters. This is a reminder that all corrections are due by Friday, March 7th at 5 p.m. Including in the corrections, you can include any omissions that resulted from either user or system errors. So if you were adding to a project to this list that was missed due to one of those reasons, I sent an email with that link. You're also required to send us a Word document with the answers you submitted to me with that. If you've not received this email, I will re-forward it to you. You must be on that list of designated 2055 MTP roadway submitters. But again, it must be to us by 5 p.m. Friday. Not 5:01, not Sunday, 5 p.m. And if a project is missing or there was an issue, get it in there. And we will move on to ranking projects. We have a deadline. So those are my two updates. If anyone else has anything.
I'll pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions or comments, particularly on that last item. All right. Okay. As always, everyone, thank you for your time and participation in the important work that we do in regional transportation planning. With that, we have completed all items on our agenda and we are adjourned.